night. So just quickly, I will call the select board to order for today, Tuesday, October 6th at 5 p.m. I think we're just waiting on the bylaw committee, review committee. I don't see anybody on here yet.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
while we are waiting for them to come online, I have a request from a lady at Alphabet Soup on Taylor Street. She would like to, every year they used to bring the kids who were there down to the police and fire station and let them climb in the vehicles and, you know, do the sirens and all the other stuff. And she's asking that due to COVID-19 this year, that they can't bring the kids there, but they would like to have a drive-by done by our police and fire departments. And I just want to check and make sure that the board doesn't have an issue with that. And I'll get back to her tomorrow and saying that to have her contact probably the police chief and go from there.
All right. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I think that's a good community engagement from our fire department and police department. But I'll put that out to Ken, who's smiling over there, and Jay to get their feedback and their thoughts.
We always know I'm for community engagement of that type, so I'm all for it.
All right. Jay?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Did you just hear we just spoke about what Chris just talked about?
Yeah, and I want to ask the same thing that Chris Martin did during COVID-19 earlier when they were having the drive-bys of all the birthday parties in the schools, when residents were calling up and complaining on how much it's going to cost to do a drive-by. Well, what's the precedent? Where's it start and where's it stop?
We want to know where they're going to start it, when they're going to stop it.
No, Alphabet Soup gets a drive-by. How many other daycares are you going to allow to do it? Because there was individuals calling up, complaining to the select board. The last time the drive-bys were being done for the school, the drive-bys were being done for birthday parties. Who gets them and who doesn't?
Well, I didn't hear anybody call, and unless someone else heard something that I heard about the schools. I did hear concerns when it was just for a town resident. I didn't have any concerns when they did it for the school, when the school had their day there. So I don't have any objections for doing it for the schools in town, the daycares in town, stuff like that. I'm fine with that part of it. I know I spoke to it before, and I had concerns when we do it for individuals, just based on that's something we can't do for all individuals. So that was my concern at that point. Someone's TV on or something?
Hey, is
It's
that
awfully
your
loud.
TV?
Yeah, someone's TV or something. It's awfully loud.
Hey, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, I can mute myself.
Okay, it must have been his TV. Okay, that's all I needed to know, Jay. I didn't know if it was where that was coming from.
No, my TV's not even on. There's nobody
Well,
in the
that's
room
kinda
but
weird.
me. There's nobody in the room but me. The cat
Then my
isn't even around.
computer's possessed because that was some really loud.
Yeah, I heard banging and stuff too, so I don't know. It's coming from
Oh, the
somewhere.
banging's coming from outside my window.
I can't
Unfortunately, I
answer that.
wish.
I'm the only one in this room right now, and there's nothing that's turned on except the computer.
Right. So Jay, are you for this or against this with the drive-by for Alphabet Soup, the daycare school?
I don't think this is a win or lose situation, no matter what we say or do. So you guys can decide. I'm just gonna stay out of it, because if residents start calling up and complaining, you guys can answer. I'm not gonna answer. Why are we doing this? Why are we calling people in? Why are we paying them to do this?
Jay, I
Because-
don't think we'd even ascertain that we'd be calling in extra people. We might be able to utilize on shift. It's literally a 30-second drive-by, meaning they get into the procession, they go by, they get out of procession. If they get a call, they leave from right there. It's not,
And as,
I don't necessarily see us bringing other people in.
and as Chris had mentioned at the beginning, when he was talking, this is something that Alphabet Soup usually brings the children down to the fire station and police station to go through the fire truck and the police cars and stuff like that. So that's something that usually happens already. And again, just because of this year and what's going on with COVID-19, that's not possible. So that was why they requested if we would be allowed to do that. And again, I don't see a problem with that. It's just something different. But it's still requiring the same type of people. It's just in a different area. So, and I don't have any, I have no concerns with people want to call and question why I voted to do that. I don't have a problem with that.
Me neither. I'm
Like I
happy
said,
to
I
answer.
feel that, yeah, it's a good community engagement from our professional services in our town for a school slash daycare.
I heard Chris in the beginning what he said. I'm just sitting here listening, and I do know a number of people that called me, and I told them to call the selectman's office. I said I had nothing to do with it, because they were complaining about their money being spent, and that's their right as residents. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just gonna abstain and stay out of it. If something happens, you two can answer.
Okay. That's
All
fine.
right, in that case, I move to allow drive-bys for Alphabet Soup by both the police department and the fire department on a date to be determined.
I will second Jen's motion. Any further discussion at this time? No. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
All right. Plus the Al putting stuff up in the.
Hi, Al.
Hey, guys, sorry, I somehow in my calendar, I had it as 5:30, although it was posted for that. And I think I just took over your meeting by accident. Let me get out of that. Hold on.
No,
Oh,
we're
you're
fine.
fine, you're
We're done. And I thought I touched something on the computer and stuff started coming up.
No, no,
I
no.
made
Glenn
you a
broke it.
presenter, Al, so it's
I'm the
looking
one
at
who
your
doesn't know what he's
screen
doing,
right
not
now.
you. Sorry about that, folks. I had it posted for 5 o'clock and I put it in my calendar as 5:30. I was here in dispatch, just shooting the breeze, waiting for time to pass, so.
Looks like I see a picture out. Looks like a lake on upstate New York.
Yeah, it's
Lake
a familiar
George.
lake. It is Lake George.
I'm
All
good.
right. Do you want me to give you guys back control so you can get away from my screen?
No, Chris gave you control so you can start the presentation.
All right.
We're all set.
Great.
We've already called the select board to order, so we're
Okay.
good.
Excellent. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Let's see who's here. I see Virginia and Brian. Chris is here, so we got a quorum. That's great. What's up, everybody? How are you? Everybody's good? Take that as a yes. Let me get into my thing here. Did for the bylaw review committee, did everybody get the chance to look at the meeting minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Any suggestions, any changes?
We're good.
All right, someone gonna make a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Virginia, second. All in favor of those approving those minutes?
aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, here we are. Bylaw Review Committee, public hearing number 3. Everybody can see my screen? All right. So looking at the people who are here, I'm going to forgo a lot of the kind of forward here because you've already seen it twice. We've met a lot, we've researched a lot, we've talked a lot, we've had public hearings. You know the process in terms of we have to get it together, we have to have these public hearings, it's got to go to a town meeting. You all know that the recall bylaw is an exception to that and requires a special act of legislation, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to skip past a lot of this because you're already very clear on it. If you have any questions, raise your hand. I'm trying to figure out where the chat is here. So if you have any questions, there it is. If you have any questions, you can just either put it in the chat or I'll ask questions as we go forward. Yes, please. All right. All right. So we're going to get past all of this. And I'd like to start by just reviewing some of the major changes from that came out of the last meeting. And so one of the things was in the recall process, it was suggested that we add wording to allow the select board to appoint a temporary clerk, just in case the proceedings ever happened where the town clerk was the person who was the subject of the recall. It would be very awkward and it would be a conflict of interest for them to have, the town clerk doing the election of somebody who could possibly replace her or whoever would be in that position. So we did that. That was one of the changes. One of the other suggested changes was to change it to 28 days to get signatures after the clerk provided the copies to the requester. The way that we had written it before, it limited it by another 5 days or so. And I think that was from Rich Domuraki. It was a good suggestion because it gives people the opportunity and time to get what is a very significant amount of signatures. So that was another change. I've got the 2 bylaws, what we initially proposed, and the new changes if anybody wants to see it. But I think you're all relatively familiar with it. Any questions about, and this is where what I'll do every slide, I'll ask if there's any questions about this section. You can either chat it in, or you can just start talking. And any questions? All right, keep moving. The next changes we made were, I want to make sure I didn't just miss one here, sorry. No, all right. So the next changes, we added some wording to the bylaw review committee to make it a standing committee that could address bylaw needs whenever or however they came up. If I recall correctly, that was a suggestion that Glenn came up with. And it makes a lot of sense because from time to time, in between when we would be doing a major review of the bylaws, there comes the opportunities where all of a sudden a law changes or one of our bylaws needs to change. And it would be nice, it makes a lot of sense for the select board to have a group that's familiar with the bylaws as they are and kind of like a clearinghouse to vet information for new bylaws as they come up. So we did add some wording for that. Again, I'd be happy to show it to you if you'd like, but this is the Cliff Notes version. If you want to see the unabridged, you need to raise your hand or ask. All good? Any questions on that? All right. We did go back and made some changes to the animal control area. One of the suggestions was to just refer violations of kennel inspections directly to a violation of the Mass General Law that guides it. We had a lot of different wording throughout, and this seems to make much more sense. So the bylaw review committee met, we took care of it, and we made those changes. Questions? All right.
Makes sense.
All right, so warrants and town meeting, we changed language to include after the petition was certified. Don't recall who made that suggestion, but we discussed it, reviewed it, and changed it. We also added wording to include that the special town meeting be called within 45 days as directed by Mass General Law, and that warrants be posted 14 days, again, by Mass General Law. We also, one of the things that we talked about too was, and again, I forget who made this suggestion, but in terms of the annual town meetings and special town meetings, being able to vote electronically was not kind of spelled out in our bylaws, or in the moderator didn't appear by the wording of the bylaws to have the authority to do that. So we discussed it. We had a conversation with with Lynn, our current moderator, and she didn't have any problem with it and thought that it probably made sense to put it in there, even though we don't have the ability really to do it now. We could in the future. I can show these to you if you'd like. We've got what we initially proposed, and then what we've changed since the last public hearing. Any questions about the warrants and town meeting? No? Okay. The select board, this was more of a clerical error in regards to the select board appointing special town council. The title of that section said only town council, but the wording of the actual bylaw itself was related to special town council. So it was literally a clerical error. We added special town council to the title. Real simple, straightforward. And it's what we intended in the first place, so.
All right.
Nothing? Good? Keep rolling? All right. Let's see, we did make some changes after the last meeting to the town administrator. We added the council on aging director to the list of the appointments that he would have the authority to make. And we didn't actually add that. He already has that. We just didn't list it not for any reason really, but we also added wording to provide that the final results of any audit reports would be posted on the town's website after finally accepted by the select board. I guess there's a process that can go back and forth where the audit comes forward, it's given to the town administrator and the select board. There's the opportunity to go back and forth and dispute, you know, whatever's in that report. But at some point, the select board, if I'm not mistaken, Chris, or one of the select board members, feel free to correct me. At some point, the select board has to accept it. And what we added was at that point, that needs to become, public on the town website. So we added that wording. And we also, one of the other things that we need to talk about, and there's a little bit of conversation that's going to happen with our group as well. But one of the clauses under the town administrator is we were trying to consolidate all of the kind of elected officials' budget situations under the town administrator as well. While doing that we were kind of barking up a tree we might not want to or could. So make a long story short, Chris Martin reached out to the town council and he said, yeah, you gotta be real careful there when you're talking about mandating that elected official does anything. So while the word is probably going to be okay the way we have it, we may have to adjust it a little bit. We weren't mandating that town elected officials really do anything. We were probably just putting a responsibility on the town administrator that he probably doesn't have the authority to enforce. So we have a little bit of work to do on that one, but the reality of it is the content and the intent of the bylaws isn't really going to change that much. Chris, feel free to fill in any blanks on that I may have missed. I don't know if there's anything.
Al,
Yes,
this is Rich Domaraki. I have a comment.
sure.
Okay, part of the audit report is the management letter. Now, in the management letter, I've written many management letters myself. I am a CPA. I've audited a number of towns. In the management letter, it provides for recommendations for improvements to the internal control procedures and other improvements. So would the management report be included where you say audit reports? Would they be available? Would they be put on the town's website?
You know, I think we had some conversation about this. Chris, do you recall the outcome of that conversation? I don't want to say yes or no.
Chief, the audit report does include the management letter because we do not present anything to the Board of Selectmen until after we have received the management letter. It has been distributed to the various departments. They have the opportunity to make comments regarding the recommendations, and those comments are included in the management letter as part of the presentation to the Board of Selectmen. So yes, both the management letter and the financials. Rich is mainly saying that when he thinks about an audit report, it's just the financials. No, an audit report includes both financials and management letter.
Would it be possible, Al, to include that where you say audit reports and management letter, just to be clear?
You know
Because
what?
They are two separate documents.
Give me 1 second because I'm not even so sure that we didn't already add that. And I may have just abbreviated it for the slide purposes.
Al, if I could just recommend something, just what his question was, just you take it under advisement and you can look at it with your committee.
Sure, it might be a real easy answer. Yes, in fact, it does say that, Rich. It already says the town administrator will post the results of the audit management letter on the town website once they are accepted by the select board. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, if I can get back to the come on. Bear with me, I'm having a trouble getting out of this document. There we go. All right. All right, so any other questions on this area with the town administrator?
Yeah, I
And
have
that
a
was-
question. Why are we moving the COA director, which is a department head that is hired and managed by the executive body select board, to an appointed position?
My understanding, Jay, anybody who knows better than I do, please feel free to correct me, is that already exists that way. It just was, it was never referred to in the bylaws as one of the appointments of the town administrator. And the way that all of those positions, myself being an example, is that the town administrator basically makes the appointment that has to be, and I forget which word it is, it's not approved, but the select board has the ultimate approval of that. And the council, what was that? Affirmed? Thank you. I don't know why I have mental block with that word, but so it already existed that way. It just wasn't spelled out in the bylaws. That was my understanding, and it was more of a kind of a housekeeping thing for us to actually put it where it belonged. Does that answer your question?
Well, if we have to get a new department head, who's going to do the final say, the select board or the town administrator?
Well, the way the process is, Jay, by the way our government is set up, is the town administrator forwards his appointment to the select board, who then affirms it or doesn't. And if they don't affirm it, then he has to find somebody else.
Well, I'm just thinking back, we did interviews and stuff for different jobs when they came to us, and I didn't know if this is the way that it's trying to be circumvented.
Jay, when you say jobs, do you have a specific example? Because the job that you're talking about may not be an appointed official that Chris has the authority to. There's other positions that, you know, like town bylaw, not town bylaw, type personnel people, like the highway department employees and things like that, that aren't part of what his list of appointments are. I don't know what position you're talking about.
Well, I'm just talking about the COA director, since that's the one that's listed. When Jessica left, the select board had the interview process and made the selection of the current COA director. And now the way this is worded, our current COA director left. The way I'm interpreting this is the town administrator can just appoint one.
Mr. Chair.
You can't, he
Sure.
just appoint someone. He's gotta, anybody that is, I'm sorry, anybody, it's gotta be affirmed by the select board, the appointment.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Now, if I recall correctly, the reason we included the Council on Aging Director position is because she's a contract employee. We were trying to make sure all contract employees were being mentioned in that paragraph. We had the highway, we had police chief, we had fire chief, we had all the other people who we have as department heads under contract, but we failed to include the Council on Aging Director because we just recently started making that a contract position. And we wanted to treat her like all other contract employees.
Yeah, Chris, thank you. I've actually forgotten about that bit of the conversation. And Jay, that's exactly what it was. And to be honest with you, I wasn't aware of how the COA director was hired or appointed previously. I made some presumptions that it was exactly the same way because we were putting it under there, but Chris is absolutely right. When we had the discussion, now that that's a new person who is under contract, that is why we ended up putting there. I completely forgot about that. Does that answer your question, Jay?
Well, not really, because when Jessica left, there was a search committee that was appointed to whittle it down to 3 candidates. The 3 candidates had appointments with the select board for interviews. One of them declined the interview because they took a job elsewhere, which left us with 2 interviews. The select board did the 2 interviews and they selected the current COA director and they hired them under contract at that point in time. So there's nothing changed here, except they're saying it's appointed. I don't understand that.
Well,
That was a faux pas. That was a faux pas, actually. It should have been Chris who handled it from the beginning to the end. And he should have given it to you guys to affirm the position of his recommendation. But he is the one who should have started from the beginning to the end. But as Chris said, that's a newly contracted position. So it just fell into place as such, Jay. There's nothing devious here. It's just taking this person and put them into the position that they're supposed to be as far as the proper authorization of appointment and so forth.
I'm just going by past practices is how we did it, and I was just wondering how this was changing. The way it's worded, it seems like it's changing. And I
Well,
think it should stay the same.
Jay, it's a great question, and I guess you know what our intent is now, and at some point, the select board is going to have to decide whether or not this goes forward, how it goes forward. So you'll have the opportunity to have conversation with your other colleagues on the board to decide if that's what you want. Like you said, if it's a change in past practice. The only thing I would say though is because a hiring process is slightly different, or even majorly different, doesn't take that authority away if it exists. By a completely different example, if Chris has that authority and in one situation decides to say, "Hey, select board, I would like for you to interview these candidates," it doesn't take that authority away from him if he has it by law. Certainly, the practice is different, but it doesn't necessarily change the way that the way that our government is structured. So you'll have the opportunity to discuss it with your other with the other select board members to decide if this is what you want, because ultimately you're going to decide what goes forward.
Okay, that's fine, because I mean, there's a difference between the town manager and the town administrator, where the town manager does the hiring and the firing versus the town, in our situation, it's up to the executive select board.
Okay, so you'll have the opportunity to discuss that with Glenn and Jen, and in the future, and decide how you want that to go forward. Make sense?
It's fine with me. It's a 2-to-1 vote anyway.
Okay. All right, any other questions on this one? Okay, keep moving. Let's see, this was in regards to the budget. It was a suggestion last time. I believe this came from the Finance Committee. It was really clerical. One of the references to the budget basically said that that they would review it and disapprove requests. It should have said approve or disapprove requests. So we just added that. Again, that's more of a clerical change than anything else. Questions? All right. All right. So that's all the stuff that we dealt with from suggestions from the last meeting. And now we're going to roll into the new topics. Again, the Council on Aging, it did change chapters, and it went from the old chapter 15 to the new chapter 18. Other than in terms of the Council on Aging itself, the wording is exactly the same. So don't confuse this with the wording of what we just talked about with the position. That's completely separate. We're talking about now the chapter and section specifically relating to the Council on Aging, and that is exactly the same. It's just in a new location. Any questions? All right. Building inspector. New place, same thing. Absolutely no changes. It's just in a new area because we reorganized them. Hopefully they make a little bit more sense. Questions? Didn't think so. Public health and safety. We made a lot of changes here. And one of the ones that I want to mention is not a change that we made, but I thought it might be asked as a question, so I figured I'd jump in front of it. The marijuana consumption bylaw, we'd already passed that as a town. But if you were looking at an older version of the bylaws, you won't see it because it hasn't been updated yet. But that is in our bylaws. It's already been approved by town meeting vote and by the Attorney General's office. So let's see, what else? We also added a section that limited the situations where people can leave items curbside, like those types of things where you get something you don't want, you put it on the curbside and call it free. We decided that you could to put a 4-day limit on that, and you can do that once every 30 days. It'll hopefully prohibit people from just throwing trash, old trashy items out at the curbside and leaving it out there and watching the grass grow up through it and things like that, and give the town a way to enforce that type of situation if need be. So that was added. And one of the more major areas that we did change, we added a nuisance, or basically for declarative or descriptive purposes, a noise pollution bylaw. We've had a few incidents over the last several years where there was a significant type of noise complaint, and we really didn't have a great local bylaw to deal with it. There was some mention of it in terms of the, I believe, planning bylaws, if I'm not mistaken. And then what we've been dealing with is with the Board of Health as a noise pollution bylaw. But that becomes very, very hard to measure, and the way that the law is written, you have to use a very specific piece of equipment, and it's got to be calibrated, and you have to be trained, and it's a nightmare trying to implement what should be a reasonable process to deal with unreasonable noise. So we did a lot of research. We looked up a lot of different bylaws that towns have. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to make one that could actually be enforced. It had a reasonable kind of way to measure. And so what we came up with wasn't really our idea. It was several other towns had what's called plainly audible. We ended up going with a distance of 150 feet, which is plainly audible. Just to give you kind of the Cliff Notes version, has to do with reasonable, quiet, comfort, and health of others. It also puts a restriction on things like power tools, and you can't mow your lawn at 10 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. Again, very reasonable type of restrictions. Doesn't mean you can't ever mow your lawn. Doesn't mean you can't ever play music. Doesn't mean your kids can't play outside. We've also put in a long list of exemptions that I'd be happy to show you if you'd like. So on top of that, we thought about, well, what about situations that if somebody's having a wedding at their house, or any other sort of situation that would be outside of that kind of normal situation? And we came up with yet another way for residents or businesses to be in compliance with the bylaw, and we called it, we termed it SD permits or sound deviation permits. So if you were having some sort of event at your house, you could go to the select board and tell them, hey, my daughter's getting married, and I know we're not supposed to play, super loud music past 10, but we'd like the DJ to go till 10:30 or whatever. And the person or the business could actually get approval to be outside of the guidelines. And I'm using a wedding as an example. It could be any reason. But like I said, so with a reasonable sort of wording in it, and then the long list of exemptions that are there, and the sound deviation permits, really, we think that we have a pretty good comprehensive noise pollution bylaw that actually can be enforced if need be. Because right now we don't, and that has been a source of frustration for some residents, and for the police department and some other departments as well who've tried to help deal with it. So that's the intent of the noise pollution or nuisance bylaw. Any questions on that?
Now, can I just quickly see the list for the exemptions?
Absolutely.
Hope that was all the exemptions, you're just going quick. And
Yeah, I didn't want you. I figured if I went through them really quickly, you wouldn't read them.
I mean, you could read that.
Can you put page numbers on that for the future? So when we have our stuff that we download from the web, when we're doing different stuff, you can just tell us what page you're on and we can go straight to that. Because
I can
reading
do
it,
that.
yeah, because reading it from my site is very small.
Yeah.
I'm trying to,
yeah,
Hold on one second.
yeah, I'm trying to raise it up inside myself. 125% generally gives you a full screen.
How's that right there?
that's better.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
Well-
Jay, we could, that's a good suggestion, and we can certainly do that. I've not done it because we've made so many changes, and then every time those changes, I have to go back and change the
Index, table
yeah,
of contents.
yeah, so
The other-
in the end,
the other-
I'll take care of it.
The other thing is, when you had the pages numbered, you would mention a page number. It would confuse us because we are all working on different bylaw sheets. And
Right.
Virginia would have one page, I'd have another page, Al would have another page. So
Yeah,
that's
and
the numbers down to the very end.
right. One other thing too, to make, just so you know, Jay, the actual document itself actually has page numbers in it. These are excerpts because this is the easiest and quickest way for me to show them to you, because if I was referring back and forth to the document in a PowerPoint, it's a nightmare. So this is the best way to do it. So I've literally cut and paste the excerpts of the bylaws into their own Word documents. And that's and literally that way I can do things like blow it up like this so you can see it. So to answer your question, the actual document does have numbers, Jay.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. So Glenn, I'll do you want me to read through these or?
And now my biggest question, and I know we've had, in the past, we've had the power outage. And, people have had like generators running and stuff like that outside.
It's mentioned.
So,
Yeah.
so,
Right there.
okay.
Emergency
That was
generators.
like that's where I was with that. So it's in there.
Right.
But
It's right there. Yep.
Yep.
No, and that's a great suggestion. We went through a lot of different things, and honestly, I feel like we've covered everything. And if we didn't cover it, the sound deviation permit can. But we've got parade.
Item G is the emergency generator one.
Yeah, right there. I'll highlight it so you can see it.
I saw it.
Okay. All right. All right. Many other questions on the public health and safety? Oh, you guys are easy. Fees. It's a different chapter. Like I said, we just reorganized it. The only real change here is I guess it's kind of significant. We completely removed the list of fees from the body of the bylaws. And this was, I believe, Steve Nally's suggestion, and it was actually pretty interesting. If the way that we have it, when it's listed inside of the bylaw as literally a chapter and section, if we were to say need to change one of the fees, you have to go get a bylaw change to do that. So basically what we've said is, the new wording, it's in the section basically says how those fees will be set and that they'll be posted on a town website. So basically it allows for whatever agency, department, or area that has that fee to set that fee, and it's basically posted on the town website, and it's also attached as an appendix to the bylaws. It's not every single fee in the bylaws that you have to go and change every single time. So we thought it made a lot more sense for people for a lot of reasons. One, so you wouldn't have to change it all the time, and B, if you did have to change it, or if anybody wanted to see it, you just go to that section and there it is.
Yeah, we made the same change when Glenn and I were on the planning board together, because if you run into a fee, which we did, the planning board, on the appendix was one amount, and in writing was another amount, the one in writing took precedent. So if you only put it in one place, it's a hell of a lot easier. And like you said, you don't have to do a bylaw change, because we did that on the zoning one.
Yeah, and that I think that's what happens with bylaws as we move forward. It becomes very easy, if all of a sudden, town hall wants to change the fee on whatever bylaw it is, but it happens to be that fee happens to be mentioned in 2 or 3 different places. You go in, you change it in the one you think it is, you don't think about the other ones. The next thing you know, you've got competing fees and who wins, right? So just having it in one space, just like the planning board, seems to make so much more sense. So that's why we did it. Questions? All right. Okay, the Historic Commission in the Historic District. We made some changes there. One of the problems that we were told was an issue was in the wording for the commission, it's mentioned that certain agencies have to have somebody on that board. Like one is I think like an architect or something like that. And
Realtor, architect.
right, so it had to be somebody from a specific organization. So you'd reach out to the Western Massachusetts Regional Architects Association and ask them to put someone on your board. Well, that's all well and good if they do it. If they don't, then that position remains unfilled on your board and becomes a problem. My understanding is that to some extent that had been happening. And so what we did was we added wording to allow for the town to put people on that commission in those positions if the agency or organization either refused or did not provide somebody. That makes sense? It just provided a little bit more latitude to the town. You still have to try to do it, but if they won't cooperate, then you have another avenue to fill your board. That was one change. The other thing that we did too is we combined the Historical Commission and the Historical District Commission into one entity. We tried to, I guess there was some confusion about who did what and who was what. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm still not so sure I understand when they were separated, who did what and things like that. I'm certainly not the person most versed in that. But suggestions to our group and from our group were to combine the two. And so that is a change that we've made. Any questions? Good. All right. Right to farm. Absolutely the same. No changes whatsoever. We didn't touch it. Stretch energy code. Same. Completely the same. Nothing to see here. Severability. We did make some changes to severability, and this was actually a very simple change along the same lines as the fees. We had half of our bylaws had their own severability clause. Other ones didn't. It didn't seem to make sense, and it probably happens the same way you run into the other issues. Bylaws come and go midterm, and someone adds a bylaw, say a nuisance bylaw, somewhere next year. They're not thinking of the fact that there's a severability clause somewhere else in the bylaw, so they add it to their bylaw because there has to be some sort of severability. So basically, I'm sure you guys all know what this is, but severability is if one piece of the bylaw ends up being basically unenforceable or unconstitutional, it doesn't invalidate the rest of it. All we did was this. We took all those miscellaneous and redundant references to severability out of the bylaws and put them in their own section that basically say the entirety of our bylaws have the severability clause. Simple as that. It's basically streamlined. Same reason as changing the other thing that we just talked about. Any
Can I-
questions?
Yeah, I have one, Al, but it's back on the previous slide that you went through about the stretch code.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back right now, Jay. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Go ahead with your question while I'm slowly getting back there.
Okay, not a problem. As a green community, we are required to implement the stretch code. And we've been seeing on the committee that things change on the stretch code every 2 to 3 years. Is there a way that we could do that similar to when you talked about fees, that we can do that when the stretch code? In other words, can we refer it to a state thing where the stretch code changes that we change versus doing the whole bylaw thing again? Otherwise, we've been seeing them change every 2 to 3 years.
So if I have your question right, what you're asking is there a way to word in our stretch energy code bylaw
Yeah,
that says if there's any changes to the state law in reference to stretch energy code that we
Yeah.
adopt? Is that what you're asking?
yes, basically, and without going through a whole bylaw change, just like we talked about fees.
That, in other words, ours would be updated automatically, Jay? Is that what you mean?
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, that whatever, well, it only makes sense if the state changes it. We
That's
have
correct.
to abide by it.
Well, and why go through the whole process every 2 to 3 years? Because the state made a change. And with them covering all this carbon neutral stuff and everything they're pushing, these stretch codes are changing every 2 to 3 years, we're seeing them.
But you know that Instat committee that you're putting together, that's going to be a committee that's an ongoing bylaw review committee. Wouldn't that come up?
We
Okay.
could do that, I suppose, Virginia, if they wanted to. I was just trying to think of a quick and easy way that it just points to the current state stretch codes and says, we're gonna live up to that.
What's interesting is this happens to be one of the areas of the bylaw that nobody suggested any changes for. So we've looked at it. I can't even tell you off the top of my head exactly what the stretch energy code says. I'm sorry, what our bylaw says. It might already refer specifically back to certain chapters and sections. Jay, you're probably more well-versed, not probably, you are more well-versed in the stretch energy code bylaw than I am, because I know nothing about it.
Yeah, we've got the HERS rating and everything else that we have to report every single year to Boston. We're micromanaged as a green community by Boston.
Yeah. So Jay, what I'll tell you what we'll do is our committee is going to have at least one more meeting after this one. We will take a look at that and discuss it and come up with a suggestion. I think the reality of it is, if we're going to have a stretch energy code bylaw, it's going to have to comply with whatever the state law is. But I do think it's smart of us to take a look at the wording to see, exactly what it does say. And we haven't done that because this was one of the areas where there was no suggested changes at all. So I guess to answer your question, Jay, we'll take a look at it, definitely.
Okay, if there's some way we can point it to an addendum or we can point it to another location so we don't have to go through this when they make their changes, I think is the best. But again, everybody has their own opinion.
Yep. We'll take a look at it, Jay, and then if we make it won't be a significant change. It's either it does exist or it doesn't, or it can, or we can or we can't. And when we forward this to the select board for the approval, you'll be able to see exactly what we did or didn't do.
I would recommend that from Greg, you get the current version of the stretch code the state is saying that we have to use now. And make sure that's the current version that's in there. That they do it by version.
Okay, I'm writing that down. Yep. Version of stretch code. And like I
And
said,
the HERS rating did change. I think it was last year.
okay. All right, well, that's a good suggestion, and I'll reach out to Greg and we'll take a look at the bylaw and figure out what direction we think makes sense.
Whatever is simple is best.
So we like
Just
some,
looking, sorry, just looking really quick, Jay, because I was wondering what the stretch code was.
Yeah.
Our bylaws have 2009, the current version's 2018, but there's a 2021 upcoming version. So would it make sense to do any changes to it now if it's going to change again in 2021?
The answer to that is yes. For the simple reason, if you're telling me, and I haven't read the document, that our current bylaw says 2009,
Yeah,
And the
it does. I
current-
just looked at it.
and the current regulation requires by the state of 2018, we're already outdated. And if you're telling me they're changing again in 2021, that's validating everything I said. It changes every 2 to 3 years.
Right. But given that we're sitting right now in October of 2020,
We should be running, by our bylaws should say where we're using the 2018 ones. It shouldn't say 2009 because it's outdated.
well, maybe the way to answer, maybe the way to fix that moving forward is to not say what version it is and say that it should be with whatever the most updated
current
version.
version is, yeah.
I don't have a problem with that at all, but what Jennifer just pointed out is exactly what I said. If our current code says it's 2009 in the bylaw, and the
Mhm.
state says it's 2018 is the most current version. And as Jennifer pointed out, there's a remark there that it's changing in 2021. It validates everything I said as far as it changes every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Correct. So I would
Chief.
recommend the verbiage just be current
Most current. I
version.
have no problem with that at all. But I don't know if we
Hold on.
have to put an addendum or what.
Chief,
Chris, go ahead, Chris.
the easiest way to do this would be to find where the stretch code is defined, whether it's in the CMRs, whether it's a Mass General law. And we just notate that the stretch code will be applied in accordance either with CMR, whatever, or Mass General law, whatever, as amended. That
I agree
way,
with Chris.
you don't have to keep going in here and doing a bylaw change. Every
Mhm.
time they decide to change some word in it, we're just going to be following whatever the current CMR or Mass General law says.
And I agree 100% with Chris. That's all I
Yeah.
was trying to point out.
I think that makes sense. I do. I think, and probably it's an easier task than, it sounds. It's a matter of just changing the wording to make sure that we're and not locking us into a specific version. I think that makes sense. So
Yeah, I agree.
we'll take a look at that and we'll make any appropriate changes and that will go forward, with the final document.
That's why you get the big bucks, Chris.
He's not saying anything.
I know.
Suspiciously quiet. All right.
You don't want to see the look on my face right now. but
Yeah.
That's why we have him around for these smart things like this that come out of his mouth.
Oh, boy. All right. That's the stretch energy code. Any other questions? All right. We talked about severability. Was there any questions there?
No.
Okay. Guess what? That's it. I'm not going to go through the whole reminder that these are a living document, all this other stuff. You guys know what the steps are in terms of the select board approval. And I guess probably the next step is our group will get together. We'll look at anything that was suggested tonight. We'll definitely take a look at that, the stretch code bylaw and figure out what we're going to do with that. And then we'll get back to the town administrator, Mr. Martin, and try to figure out when we can put this in front of the select board and then it's out of our hands and into yours. And, hopefully we can get this to town meeting at, as soon as possible and get this finally finished after all this time. So, yeah.
You certainly don't want to wait to an annual town meeting for this. It's just going to be overwhelming, for the town meeting, annual town meeting. So a special should be called.
Yeah, and I think
We get it finalized, we just look at having a special town meeting for it. Makes it easier, a lot of information in it too, for people to hear and understand.
For this.
yeah.
There'll be a lot of questions.
Yeah, and just somebody had made a suggestion about possibly doing it in sections. I really think it's a bad idea, and I'll tell you why. Because all of these questions are going to happen, at the special town meeting, and it could be very lengthy. But if you start to change it in one spot, you've got to change it in others, and to try to do that over a course of more than one event, special town meeting, I think it's going to be problematic. And certainly that's not my decision to make. I get that, but I do have some concerns about that. I would like to just get it done in one session. We can certainly put the information out in advance, give people the opportunity to ask questions ahead of time if they'd like.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that. We could do whatever we can to try to limit the time frame when we're actually at town meeting. But let's face it, that's what it's there for, and people are going to want to have their opinions heard, and that's the process. So, but I do think it probably makes most sense to do it in one night. But in any event, once we have it, we'll get with Chris, and he will decide when he can get in front of the select board and how the whole special town meeting date frame will work. So, does anybody have any questions for me or any of the board members?
Al, this is just
Al, is this going to require, or Chris, actually, is this going to require another presentation to the town? Or are we all set here?
I think it should probably require another presentation to the town, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Maybe we can do something via GCAM, do a special, have Al go and make his presentation, have GCAM record it all as one session after everything is done. And then after that, just have a contact number where people can call with questions, and hopefully we can do it that way.
Yeah, I like something like that, Chris. And maybe just like a certain email, we set up an email for questions, and the questions can be asked and through the email, and then they can be answered too. That might be helpful before a special town meeting as well. So some of those questions get answered beforehand. But yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, I'm all for answering questions before we get to town meeting, our special town meeting. I think that makes the most sense. If we're going to get in and out in the same day, that's going to have to happen. And I'm certainly not opposed to working out something where there's sort of presentation. I think for the most part, I think these things, I think that takes care of us legally. But past that, I think it probably makes sense to do it all in one shot. Let people see what's going on. Give them one more opportunity to either hear it and or question it. And you know what? We'll talk with the board. I keep calling the board. I apologize. I'll talk with our committee about that at the next meeting and figure out how and when we can do that. And perhaps I'll talk to Chris Martin first to get an idea when he's thinking about the special town meeting. That way we can time this accordingly to make it most effective. So that's great.
I know when we did the water pipeline, when we did those public forums, the people came up and they said they liked that because they got their questions answered and they were in and out. And we weren't in special town meeting too long on that article to have it voted on. And it passed twice by 2/3.
So let me, if I hear the members correctly and Chris correctly, you're not looking for another public hearing. You're looking for another opportunity where we go through all of the information so people have an opportunity to question. Obviously, it's going to be public and, it's a public meeting for sure. What you're looking for?
I think it's something as simple as a public forum. Here, come ask your questions. Don't wait to town meeting, because it worked good on the water pipeline. We breezed through that article at special town meeting, but we were in there a while answering questions at the forum. I mean, Brian was there. He could tell you that. It
Yeah.
worked.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm not opposed to it at all. I think, and I can certainly talk to Alex from GCAM and see if he'd be willing to, whatever we do, record it. That way, if somebody can't make it, they can always refer back to it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Good idea, Jay.
Yeah, absolutely. Virginia, did you have something? You look like you started to say something.
I think this is just a clerical thing, and it could be that I copied the wrong draft. But
Yep.
when I look at the chapter dealing with the Council on Aging, where it falls, I have it as still chapter 13, which I know it shouldn't be, because it's falling after, when you run it off, on my page, it's page 45.
Mhm.
And it's it should be chapter, whatever you said it was, but it's printed out as chapter 13.
Did we lose you? So there, Virginia?
I guess you did lose me. I said my Council on Aging prints out as chapter 13.
Yep.
The heading is.
Yeah. Without looking at it, I can't tell you, but I will double check it. I'm going to have to go back and look at every single chapter and section and make sure that it's where it's supposed to be. It's certainly possible that I wrote the wrong section down
I
clerically.
think you wrote the wrong.
It's possible. I'm not always right. But, okay.
Yeah, but it's in the right spot.
Okay. Any questions? Comments?
I have one comment. I'll just be awfully quick. Al, I just want to thank you and the committee for all this hard work and time and effort you put into it. And I don't know if people realize how much time and effort goes into it, and that's what you're giving to the town. And I know I appreciate it, not just as a select board member, but also as a town person. So thank you to all of you.
Thanks, Glenn. We appreciate that. And I will tell you that it's been a long process, and it's not just our committee members that have put a lot of time and effort into it. In fact, there's been a lot of residents. Rich Damaraki, who was here earlier, has put a bunch of time into it. In fact, I'm not so sure we would have a recall bylaw if he hadn't suggested it. If I'm being perfectly honest, we expected to be kind of in contrast and conflict rather with committees like the Finance Committee. And I don't think I'm embellishing to say that we ended up with a partner in it than somebody who was opposed to us. They were at more meetings than I ever can even imagine that they would be. So we've certainly put a lot of time in, but and we appreciate your kind words, but also there's a lot of effort and time put in by a lot of members of town, other town boards, department heads, select board members. And I think it really was a community effort. So it's been a long road, and the road is coming to a successful end here. So thank you very much. If nobody else has anything else, any of the other bylaw review committee members, anything to add?
Yeah, Virginia, you know what's coming up soon?
Some places sooner.
Did you
Another
not take it
I'm
down?
so excited to see that, Brian. I wanted to put mine up, but they said no.
Mine never comes down. There's 2,000 lights on there. I refuse to take it down.
Jealous.
Way to hold the line, Brian. I like it. All right.
The
Hey, thank
grandkids
you all.
love it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. And from the bylaw review committee, have a
I
great
move
night.
to adjourn, Al.
Sounds like a plan. Second, Virginia seconds it. I can see it. She's thinking about it. There it is. There's a second.
Good night, folks.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
You too.
You know.
See ya.
Uh,